at LivTours, we pride ourselves to make sure that the dreamer, the traveler, can live and experience a destination from every angle.
This is Kathy McCabe. Welcome to the Dream of Italy podcast. You know me from the PBS travel series Dream of Italy and the award-winning website and publication. Join me as we explore the sights and sounds of Italia. From the canals of Venice to the piazzas of Puglia, from the fashion houses of Milan to the vineyards of Tuscany. Hop on, it's gonna be a great ride. Andiamo! Okay, well, I'm thrilled to be here today on the Dream of Italy podcast and video podcast. We'll be showing you some great pictures of Italy and Rome if you're watching this, but if you're not, you'll get to imagine. I'm here with Angelo Carotenuto. Did I say that with enough of a little accent?
You sure did, Kathy.
The founder, no matter how much I try, I have Italian blood, but I'm very American, he's the founder and co-owner of LivTours, which started life and how I first knew you as LivItaly. And that's still, I know, your main passion, but you now have more than 350 tours throughout Europe. And thank you so much for joining me today to talk about something I think is kind of interesting, how to see Italy now.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Kathy. And it's always a pleasure to speak to your audience, and anything that I could help with, I'd be happy to be your resources and your audience's resource.
Well, I think that people, and even myself, and going back to Italy, I went to a couple of the big cities this summer in high season, and usually I try to avoid it a little bit, but traveling to Italy, I think, has changed, and the way that we approach travel planning. You can't just wing it anymore. You used to be able to just show up and walk into the Vatican, walk into St. Peter's, see what you wanted to see. Now it takes a lot more thought, and you need to book tickets. So I'd love to talk to you. In all the years I've been doing this, 22, you've been doing this 14, 15 years, people are planning way ahead. Yeah. And you have to. So
yeah, the booking, now mind you, there's always the client that waits the very last minute, the client that is out to dinner in a beautiful trattoria in Trastevere and is, with his wife, maybe browsing the internet and finding a last minute tour available for the next day. Hey, what are we doing tomorrow? Let's go here. That still happens. But the booking window, the average booking window right now is 4 to 6 weeks. But as I just tried to explain, we're seeing more and more people getting interested, inquiring, and even finalizing a conversion, finalizing a booking of any tour for the following year, months in advance. They just want to make sure that they have it all set up for themselves. And a lot of people even righteously believe the sooner I book, the better service I'm going to receive when I actually finally get there, believe it or not.
Well, there's only so many tickets. So now you need tickets, you need to book ahead to go to most of the major museums, the major sites, the things that are on the bucket list for people, right?
Yeah, there's I don't want to make a generalization, but there's, first of all, I think you have to book a little bit of everything. Yes, museums are the most sensitive because there's only a certain capacity for each museum a day. Even though a lot of them are changing their policy and how they release the ticket, how they allot partnerships, how much direct consumer volume they want to receive versus tour operator volume they want to receive. But in reality, any experience at some point is going to have its max cap.
Yeah, a great guide is right.
So we got to make sure that if that's your dream, that you want to make sure it comes true, you do have to book it as soon as possible. But part of it is a little bit of, and you do an amazing job at this, to be completely honest with you, Kathy, and it is our responsibility to sort of evangelize that there's so much more than what people are convinced that that is their dream. That is their dream, to be there, to explore, to be fascinated by, to smell, to touch, etc. But oftentimes people are convinced that, oh, I gotta go to Rome and do the Vatican Colosseum. I gotta go to the Venice and do the Doge's Palace. Yes, you may have to because it's your first time. But Italy is so much more.
Oh, I know.
We gotta evangelize the rest of this
I
country.
know, and that is my whole purpose. And one thing that you helped me with is in our Travel, Transform, and Thrive special. We interviewed various expats, one of whom lived in Rome, and we wanted to do something different with her. And we did the sidecar, the Vespa sidecar tour of Rome, which you set up. And I was so blown away by it because it was completely, I've gone to, been going to Rome for 25 years or more. I haven't done the math. And I had never seen Rome like this. And even looking up, being in the sidecar, looking up at the Roman pine trees, it was surprising and new and different to me. And you offer a lot of experiences like that. So if you've already seen, I think people, even if it's your first time in Italy, you should always try to do that combination. Okay, I'm going to go see those things that I've always heard about, but then have a totally unique experience, something that you can tell a story about when you get home. You know, you're at a party, and you're like, wow, I guess, I went in a hot air balloon, or I made, I went and made pizza, or it doesn't have to be like crazy James Bond. But those are a lot of the memories. So I'm so curious because you're always adding these unique experiences. What are some of the interesting things you're offering in Rome and around Italy right now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At LivTours, we pride ourselves to make sure that the dreamer, the traveler, can live and experience a destination from every angle, and that is physically, but also metaphorically. So we sort of vertically grow our portfolio so that every single stereotype or dream you may have about that destination, we have created a service around it. So yeah, it could be as beautiful and as enchanting, as romantic as telling at a party that you've seen Rome from sitting on a sidecar in a vintage Vespa that was custom made in a beautiful Italian flood colors to zip around the city. And yeah, you say you're like at a squirrel level, but you're going through the traffic and you see in the city
It's
from a
really
different
something.
perspective.
I do a lot of
Absolutely.
very cool things, but I have thought of it, recommended it to people. When I was just in Rome a few weeks ago, doing I was with a family vacationing with a family, and it was their first time in Rome, or the kids, so we did the usual. I'm like, damn, we should have done that sidecar. So it makes an
Yeah.
impression. But what are some of the other things you're offering in Rome and Florence, Venice, to give people some ideas of
Absolutely.
what they can book?
The list is long, so I'm going to go with the most particular ones. Just
Yeah.
so, I mean, not the old traditionals. For example, in Rome, we're very proud of our golf cart tours we have daytime golf cart tours and evening golf cart tours that include an aperitivo, a glass of wine, a little bit of food.
Oh,
These
yeah.
are tours that are fantastic, both for people with limited walking abilities or families, but even couples who just want an orientation
Take it
experience as soon as
easy.
they come in, and take it
Yeah.
easy, exactly, get over their jet lag and so forth. We have created a series called the Women's Tours,
Oh, I saw
where
those and I'm really intrigued.
yeah, where I created the series actually during COVID, and we're right now in ancient Rome at the Vatican, in Florence, and Venice, and the Louvre, where the basic instruction is in places where you generally speak about the male protagonists. My dear tour guides, you're not allowed to talk about any man for the next 3 hours. So imagine trying to enter the Vatican Museums and having to discuss only female artists or female protagonists in paintings and statues, or wives of, or lovers for that matter, of certain very famous individuals that you
This
are
is
obliged to
great.
talk about it. Or same goes with ancient Rome, or Caterina de' Medici and the Medici family and their
Oh,
women in Florence. So that was a theme tour that we're really
I
connected
love
with.
it.
Otherwise, in Rome, for example, in preparation for the Jubilee Year,
Yes, we have to
we
talk about
created,
that. 2025 is big.
Yeah,
And
well,
what do you have planned? And then we'll talk about the bigger picture.
absolutely. We created a tour. People are going to be interested in seeing the four major basilicas of Rome. St. Peter's Basilica, you generally see thanks to visiting the Vatican Museums. Um, but the other three basilicas, the people either generally don't know of or have a difficult time getting to, or don't know how to access, are St. Paul out of the walls, Santa Maria Maggiore, St. Mary, and St. John. And with St. Peter's, these are four major basilicas of Rome with the four holy doors. So we created a tour of the three major basilicas of Rome, excluding St. Peter's, that with incredible accesses. We have a partnership with Santa Maria Maggiore, where we get to see the domus, the underground. They found an ancient Roman home under the main floor of Santa Maria Maggiore. You can go see the crib of Jesus Christ, or a piece of the crib, whether you want to believe it or not. We go to the loggia. We go up to see the Bernini staircase that connects the loggia, where the cardinals used to live, to the sacristy of the church. So these are very special accesses that we have gained through partnerships with Santa Maria Maggiore. And then we, in a beautiful private car, we take our clients to St. Paul out of the walls. Also very hard to reach on your own. Generally, you don't think about going off the beaten path
No,
that
people
much.
don't. It's not the first right place to
Exactly.
do.
But I mean, St.
Very
Paul, St.
important though.
Peter, exactly. And it's a beautiful cathedral, and there's an underground sacristy there as well. And then we turn back, and then we come towards the city again, and we go see St. John the Lateran, which was the seat of the papacy until St. Peter's and the Vatican was made the seat back again. So St. John the Lateran has enormous influence. It's a beautiful church. It was the cathedral of the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, for several centuries. And people don't realize that until we bring them in and they see the grandeur of such church. All of this in preparation of maybe side experiences, or maybe it shouldn't be side, necessary experiences that people are going to feel the urge of doing if they decide to travel in 2025 to Rome.
What are the pros and cons of that? So I was just in Rome. There's a lot of construction. They're really getting ready. They're expecting, do you know how many million? I don't remember the number, but it's like crazy. So what would you recommend to people if they want to come to Rome or Italy in 2025? Is this, how to navigate that?
Okay, so we're sort of we're kind of at business level, we're comparing it to what's happening in Paris with the Paris Olympics right now.
Right.
And we're having to kind of realize, well, the magnitude of the impact. Now, the Paris Olympics are only a few couple of weeks, including the Paralympics, and they're happening in this city, right? So they involve the infrastructure of the city very, very much. And a lot of people are traveling for that event, and the people that weren't traveling for that event may feel disrupted at some point. I think the experience of the Jubilee Year in Rome, or in Italy in general, will be very different. It will not be as disruptive as the Paris Olympics. We're talking, yes, about millions of people that are planning on coming to Rome to walk through the holy doors or see and hang out with the Holy Father, or assist to any of the ceremonies or masses. But these are spread out through the entire year, both in winter
Right. At
and
least
in
it's
summer.
not like a 2-week thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And these are people that most likely will not interfere with your desired things to see. These are people that are going to go to set up events.
Right.
They may fill out public buses and metros if you tend to get around like that, but to walk through the city, to visit a museum or a site, take a train to Florence or to the rest of Italy, I don't think people will really realize the difference. Yes, we're talking about some few key huge events with thousands of people, but we're having one tomorrow. Tomorrow there's 5,000 people coming to see the Pope for an private event of his, and they're everywhere in St. Peter's Square, and they're just there hanging out, waiting for the event to happen. It's like waiting for a big concert to happen, and just
Yeah.
imagine that happening several
Yeah.
times throughout the year.
Yeah. So it seems like if you want to do it, you can do it. You can do Rome. Book ahead for the Jubilee. But I think it's a great time also to go to other places in Italy.
Absolutely.
So you offer, obviously you do the big three, but what are some of those other places that you offer, tours or unique experiences. If somebody, you know, maybe they've done a trip or two, they've seen the big things and they're looking for something a little different.
Yeah. So if you're planning on getting out of the city of Rome, regardless of the possible disruptions, LivTours is proud to say that we're basically everywhere from Milan all the way down to Sicily. So we have a good amount of options, both, you know, major sites, major cities that you want to go see, but also minor. If you want to take an hour train ride up to Florence, I would strongly suggest, speaking of alternative routes, speaking of alternative experiences, we have a beautiful artisan tour where we take you into these very local shops, a leather shop, a paper shop, and a rock shop, a stone making shop. And we get to have you experience not hands-on, but sort of sit next to the local craftsman, the local artisan, and learn and understand, you know, these century-old traditions, Florentine traditions that.
Oh, I always love that. And it's so
yeah.
important. It's not just like, oh, we're going to go see this. Doing these tours, buying their products is helping them survive. And it is so needed.
Creating awareness is making them survive. Yes.
Yeah,
it's a little
this
bit.
is in danger.
Yeah,
that your kids,
exactly.
when they come to Florence or Rome,
Exactly.
are not going to have that. And I hope
Exactly.
that is you know, you're seeing just massive amounts of tourists coming to Italy, and it's wonderful for the economy, for our own businesses. But, you know, it's all for nothing if we can't use it in a way to preserve Italian culture.
Part of our mission is to help the client understand how to visit and not just come and exploit. So come and live the locality in the most transcendental way and bring back memories and emotions that you can then evangelize with your family and friends, and not just come through without making any sort of impact on yourself. That's a little bit, slow travel is a little bit what we're getting at, but I don't want to use that because sometimes often people get turned off when you use that word, you know.
Right.
And slow travel doesn't mean that you have to do things slowly.
Right.
It means that you have to do things meaningfully.
Yes.
You know, you can still go to 100 miles an hour because you want to see a gazillion things, want to see and do a gazillion things within the very limited time or budget that you've dedicated for that vacation, but you have to do it in a meaningful way. Another tour that you're making me think of is, for example, take another fast train, and go to another big city or big Mecca, which is Venice. So we teach people how to row in Venice.
You know, I've done that. I love that. I've done 2 rowing lessons in Venice.
Yeah.
One with a real gondolier, which I'm not sure they all are allowed to teach that. Like, I was on the real gondola, but also I think it's called Voga alla Veneta, the traditional rowing with a rowing instructor.
Yeah.
And again, like the sidecar, you know.
Yeah.
You see the city. Sorry to jump in, like, without you explaining, but I'm so enthusiastic about this. You see Venice from the true Venetian angle. Like, everything is the water. All these gondolas, these boats have been used for years, and it's like you're experiencing Venice as it was meant to be experienced. So I'm so glad you offer that.
Yeah. I mean, it's sometimes people, it's kind of cute in a way, and you know, like, people really don't realize that there are no cars in Venice until they actually are in Venice.
Yeah.
And that, you know,
and there never will be. And
we're westernized, so we're westernized in the Occidental world, especially in North America. We live in cars, you know. We do, and so to go in a place, and so you're like, wait a minute, so these people walk everywhere? Yeah, well, okay, people walk everywhere in small towns, etc. But actually, almost every resident Venetian, now quite a few are left, not very many are left. It's declining population. This is true. But all local Venetians have a little boat. you know, a little boat, maybe with a small engine or rowing boat, and they see their own city. They use their own transportation as much as we would, not maybe not as much, but they do it just as much as we would use a car,
Yeah.
to go around and go grocery
Or one
shopping.
of those, I
Absolutely.
hate these, but those scooters, the little private, one person sort of transportation that we have in a bunch of, do you have scooters you don't have scooters in Rome, do you?
No,
You know what I'm
no,
talking
no.
about. I
Yeah,
hate
I do.
them.
I do. I do.
Oh, please. I hope they don't come to Rome. But what I mean is it's like your own little personal transportation. But again, I'm thinking even almost when I think of the footage that we shoot or then when I was doing it is you're seeing the city you're not seeing it from a vaporetto, you're seeing it from a totally different angle. You're going around these little corners and these little canals that
Hmm.
you wouldn't on a vaporetto. And
Hmm.
that's a chance, we always worry about Venice, right? And will
Yeah.
it remain what it has always been or just be like this Disney World? But I think in having an experience like that, it's not, it's the real Venice. It's
Yeah, well, and it's funny you say so because the speaking of the survival or the impact you want to have on a local community, the trainers that we collaborate with are part of a women's only sports
that's
association,
who I
Venetian
did it
Sports
with. I know
Association,
them.
exactly.
Yes. And they're
And
fabulous.
all they're fabulous people, and all their money goes back to the women's
So you
association
would
to support
actually,
women in sports.
that is amazing. And so if you go and do LivTours tour, you're actually doing it with the same people I did it with.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
that's great. They are, and again, they're like locals banding together to preserve their culture. It's
Hmm.
they are their own like community, and Venice is alive and well. It's just
Yeah,
in these pockets. We often see the doom and the gloom, but
yeah.
there are lots of people working to preserve and to share. And I love going. I think an interesting tour always is the Jewish ghetto in Venice. For people, it's always fascinating. I think gives people a new perspective.
Absolutely. And speaking of different perspectives, we're proud partners of St. Mark's Basilica, and with whom we collaborate in an after hours visit. So we get to, people are always concerned about the crowds and seeing it during the day or potentially standing in line and or not having the time to have their own spiritual time, for example, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it is a church. So we have a slot in the evening reserved just for us, literally just for us, just for LivTours. We meet our clients half an hour before the slot on the other side of the square. We do a beautiful introduction of the square that is now kind of turning on its light. The snack bars, the local bars are having their orchestras outside
Oh, I
starting to
know.
play.
Venice is beautiful. Yes.
And we walk through that square. We talk about the facade of the church, and we go to the side, and there's a small little gate on the side of St. Mark's, and it opens from inside, and there's one custodian that opens the door for LivTours. We go in, and we talk about the loggia and the entryway for a little bit, and then we go into the actual main floor of the church, and it's pitch dark, and we help people go into the main floor, sit on the pews. We sit them all down, and that same custodian that allowed us in closes the gate, goes into the back of the church, goes to all the switches of the lights. And as you know, Kathy, St. Mark's Basilica has these beautiful golden mosaics in these circular and round and beautiful arched ceilings. Well, he turns on the switches one by one. So here you are in the pitch dark, sitting in the pew, waiting for something to happen. All of a sudden, you have this light show. And speaking of, experiencing something with meaning,
Yeah.
if I
I
were to
mean,
say, you have to, yeah, this is the way to see St. Mark's.
I think generally this is and I know you offer other like after hours or early experiences. This is generally a great tip, an antidote for sort of all the other tourists you may encounter is to do one of these early or after hours or night tours. You can still get these places more to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, you may require a little bit bigger budget, but if you
Yeah, you
want to
do have
do
to
it,
pay for
you
access,
know,
but I think It may be worth it to pick and choose if there's a certain
Yeah,
place that's really important. Now,
to
do you
you
guys do the
exactly.
key tour, the
The
early,
Keymaster
yeah, at the
in the
Vatican?
Vatican Museums, yes, we will in 2025. But what we have done this year is something in between the Keymaster and the actual official opening of the Vatican Museums, which is a 6:45 a.m. tour. And all in all is, uh, I don't want to say better than the Keymaster. The Keymaster is certainly unexperienced, meaning to go there with a guy that has all the keys and help him open up every door, etc., is absolutely a fantastic thing to do. There isn't much interaction with your tour guide, though, in that experience. It's all a show about the Keymaster
Yeah,
and about
yeah.
the ceremony of opening every door and turning every light on. And that's the experience you're paying for. What we do at LivTours, what we've done in 2024, and we will continue to do in 2025, is an actual tour with an empty museum. So at 6:45 a.m., Keymaster is gone. He's done his thing. Now the hallways, the galleries, the paintings, the statues, the courtyards, and the Sistine Chapel are turned on. They're all open, but they're free for us and only us to give a tour. And we've been doing that very successfully. We call it Alone in the Sistine Chapel and the Vatican Museums, and people have been
That sounds
in awe
dreamy
with it.
to
Yeah,
me. It's worth it. It's so worth it to get up early and to see,
yeah,
um and to see it, like, we were talking about how has traveling changed, or how has traveling to Italy changed, when you were going 25 years ago. Not that you were alone in the Vatican Museum, but you had more
no.
space. You had, you could take things in a little bit easier. And so I think anything people can do and book to, to get that kind of access. One thing we haven't talked about, which I think is fascinating, is guides. And you started as a tour guide in Rome. And how much, I'm curious, like, how you pick your guides, how you find these people, because the experience is so made by, often the person who's telling the stories, giving the context. And I always encourage everyone, whether if you can't, whatever your budget is, to go on some kind of tour with a real live human being, because all of Italy is about context of
Mm,
the backstory.
mm.
How do you sort of source these guides and look for people who really make the experience?
There's a very important partner of LivTours who says, and I'll never forget this phrase, who says the tour guide can make or break a vacation. Um, Believe it or not, you could be completely disinterested in seeing the Sistine Chapel for whatever personal reason, but you feel like you have to tag along with your family
Many
because you
people
need to
do,
go.
right? Many
Exactly.
places.
And a tour guide can, and if you don't have a tour guide, you're going to come in with that attitude, you're going to come out with that attitude, but a tour guide maybe has the power, the storytelling abilities to change that point of view and make you treasure that moment, even though you may have been coming in with it with a different perspective. Yes, you're right, I have been a tour guide since 2004, so 20 years. This year we're celebrating 20 years. And I come from a family of artists, and I have acting and singing background, and my degree was actually in European art history and in acting from Los Angeles. So I had sort of a little bit of a path designed for myself when I decided to work in the travel industry. I felt myself very at ease and in the right place at performing, because at the end of the day, of course, the academic content is crucial and extraordinary important, but it is a lot about how you say rather than what you say. And I did a very good gym for the first 6 or 7 years of tour guiding literally people who were just trying to wing it and skip the line last minute, or pre-booked VIPs, or cruise ship travelers who wanted to see everything in 6 hours, or I even toured high school children from North America who needed to see 12 capitals in 8 days on a
God
bus,
bless you. But
I
how
did a
did
big gym.
you, it sounds like it's this, and it's this ability to perform and to tell the story in a way
Right.
to keep the attention of teenagers, for instance.
Teenagers or anybody else, Kathy. And that's why when I started LivTour or LivItaly, it was very important that the tour guides that we first started picking were aligned with my style, were aligned with my vision and our values of essentially being honored to be called to become actors of that dream coming true. And a dream is made of emotions, it's made of feelings, right? When you're play with me a little bit, indulge in this with
I
me. You know,
will, yeah.
imagine yourself being a lawyer in New York who is planning their Italy vacation. And for yourself and for your family, you in your planning, you're probably hoping, let's go back to the Sistine Chapel since we've talked about it. And you're planning of being in Sistine Chapel. You probably are cultured enough to see images in that dream of the ceiling of the Michelangelo, maybe the two fingers on the statue, maybe a few other snippets of things that you know of that you've learned from maybe in a college class or in high school art history or whatever. And hopefully you see yourself in the Sistine Chapel with a tour guide. The tour guide is explaining to you the beautiful paintings of Michelangelo's tragic making of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel on the Last Judgment Day. Hopefully that tour guide is good looking. But the most important thing is your emotional impact on that dream. And that emotional impact on that dream comes from the words and the storytelling that person is. And you probably don't see that person's face in the dream. It's probably all canceled up and wiped up. And that's what we have to fulfill. We find ourselves in a very honoring position of being that person that allows you to live. That's why the name of our company,
Yeah.
right? Live as much as possible, relive as much as possible those emotions you probably felt during your planning stages, during your dreaming stages, during your longing of being there stages. As we grew, clearly it becomes harder to find or discover people that are totally aligned with you. So I love workshopping them. You know, I love giving them training, and because I come from that background, you know, we talk about how important it is to spark certain hormones with different
This is
stories.
fascinating. And I mean, it's very
Yeah.
similar, even though I don't think about it, to what I do more with the TV show, but also in the magazine and the website. It's like, it is such an emotional experience. And what you made me realize, which I kind of know, but to explain, is like, when people go to Italy, they have certain expectations. Now they are dreams, but I don't know if there's any other place in the world, perhaps Paris, perhaps London, that you have a vision of what you think it's going to be, right? You know, you might be going to, yeah, I don't know. It's a very from even the planning of it and you've seen it all your life. So you have to deliver. I think there's a lot, you know, and Italy always delivers, but this emotional connect, you know, travel isn't really about just going to see a place and hear about things. No. It's the connection you make back to your own life, and something you take about greater humanity and your role in it, how you fit in that, how so it's really interesting to have this conversation with you, because you often think it's like, oh, here, go to this website and book this tour. So much more, you know.
So much more. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, we think of Italy as an amazing playground for that. Because there's, yes, people have either because, I don't know, maybe Italy was the first influencer of all these countries, you know, was really good at influencing
you know,
people.
from
Maybe
the
because
movies, TV
yeah,
shows,
exactly.
books.
Immigration. Yeah,
Yeah, the Grand Tour, you know, not just recent, but there's a lot of everyone has a connection and a story, and then sometimes it takes that person, and like on the TV show, I'm that person, at least for that time you're watching. When you have the guide, they're that person who's kind of bringing it home, and it's a
Mm.
really important role. And I will tell you, on this trip that I did, where we went to several places in Europe just recently, one of them we had what I thought was not a good tour guide.
Mm.
And I will remember
Sorry to
this.
hear that.
Yeah, me too. But like when you have a bad one, it makes you realize how important, like you almost have
Oh
to have
yeah.
that, like in working in travel. And, I'm always getting great recommendations, and I know great companies. And so I haven't had a bad tour guide in a while. And uh, it's like having a bad meal in Italy, which is hard, but it happens. And it makes you realize, wow, all those people I've toured with before. And I had to quantify when I explained to the person who booked it what was not so great about this person. And it's that she didn't connect at all with us. And there were other issues, but I realized we just felt no connection, and how important that is
Well,
to the experience.
yeah, absolutely, and I'll tell you what, we're all humans, and we can all have a bad day.
Oh, I'm sure you've had, yeah, right. People with
And
bad days.
you know what I mean?
Me
Like,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I'll tell you what, it is going back to mass tourism, going back to diversifying your travel experience, going back to, if you've been here once or twice, try and explore and experience something a little bit different and off the beaten path, whether it's still within the same city or taking a day trip or going out in the countryside or elsewhere that is really not well known. But you're going to find people a little bit more energized and passionate in it's easier that Marco is going to have a bad day giving you a Vatican Museum tour if
And
that's
this was
all he does and that's all they're asking him to do. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
this was a tour that I'm sure she does the same place every day.
Exactly.
So this is why, and maybe on certain days she's amazing, but this is why it's important to seek out those, like if you're the only guide doing this tour, or you're in a part of Italy people aren't going to as much, it usually does shine through it.
It elevates the experience. Exactly. For
Yeah.
both
So
the performer and the receiver. Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So you've lived in Rome for a long time, and um, what are some of your favorite places to eat, to stay, to have a gelato? Give us the intel.
I'm probably born and raised in Rome. So I
Well,
come
where
from a
is,
neighborhood.
remind me, the American, you're half American.
Yeah,
Remind
my
me your
mother is
story.
Californian. Yeah, my mother's
Okay. I
Californian, but
knew
yeah.
I knew you obviously have an American,
Yeah.
presence. So you
Um,
born and raised in Rome, so you're a native. Even
yeah,
better,
even better.
even
Uh,
better.
I I come from a small little neighborhood, a residential neighborhood that is in the northeast side of the city called Monte Sacro. And generally speaking, I have to be completely honest with you. You can find really, really good refined food in the city center, but for the most part, unfortunately, it has become a little bit touristy. So if you have the opportunity of going a little bit on the, a little bit off the side, um, Montesacro could be one, El Pigneto could be another one, San Lorenzo could be another one, even perhaps Prati, for example. I lived in
Oh
Prati
yeah.
for 12 years. Prati is often, it's on the other side of the Tiber it's on the Vatican area, northwest of the Vatican, going towards the Stadio Olimpico, and there aren't very many hotels because it's a good mixture between offices and residents. But it's a gorgeous neighborhood. It's really beautiful. In the weekend, it quiets down, and the restaurants and the shopping is really high level and local. In Prati, I would strongly suggest to go to a restaurant that both Christine and I consider one of our favorites, and it's called Sorpasso.
Mhm.
The good thing about Prati is that even though I just told you to get out of the city center, it's really a hop and a jump. You cross
Huh.
any
Yeah.
of the rivers, and you're in Prati. And Sorpasso is a restaurant whose menu changes every day because they collaborate with local, we call them kilometer zero, farms or entities that bring whatever was fresh, whatever was caught fresh on that day or raised. So it could be a cheese, it could be a ham, it could be a vegetable, it could be a piece of meat, it could be a pasta that they just made that day. And their menu changes, and it's always a little particular, always a refined and research. It's not necessarily always traditional. It's not your carbonara, matriciana, etc. But it's really delicious, and they have a huge selection of wines. So I strongly suggest Sorpasso. And always in Prati, I know, I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit monothematic, but if you do want your cacio e pepe, gricia, carbonara, matriciana experience off of a big, beautiful square called Piazza Mazzini, there's a restaurant called Cacio e Pepe. Now, don't confuse that with the Cacio e Pepe in Trastevere.
Okay.
This is the original Cacio e Pepe. In the evening, they literally invade the whole block with small tables and chairs everywhere on the sidewalk,
Oh, I
even
love
though
it.
it's a small hole in the wall, right?
Very Italian.
You have to line up. You cannot reserve. To
Even
give you an
better.
idea, it's fresh homemade pasta, and their cacio e pepe is €7. So I
So
mean,
there's
that's
something that's still
exactly
affordable in the
these
world.
places still exist.
Oh, that's a relief. That's a relief to hear that. So it's
Yeah,
wonderful. I think there's a new hotel, the Hoxton in Prati. There's
yeah.
like a few more choices for people. I know a lot of
A few things are
expats,
happening. Yeah,
friends have lived in Prati, and it's I think a great idea for people visiting Rome to try to stay in a different neighborhood, to feel a little more local again, especially if they've been before. And a lot
yeah.
of the people who watch Dream of Italy listen to this have been to Rome before, so they're looking for something new. You've really brought alive for me, what uh, booking a tour really means, or booking a guide, or choosing an experience. And so we have a code that you've provided if people want to book any of the experiences or look for other ones on your website, which is livtours.com, right?
Yep.
They can use Dream of Italy 10. And that will also be in the show notes for this podcast and a link. We will link up all the tours that you've told us about. Well, we have had quite the conversation. We've covered a lot. So if people want to find out more about your company, it's livtours.com, and they can book and get 10% off with Dream of Italy 10. And if you want to see the show notes, find out more about the episode, you can come to dreamofitaly.com/podcast, and we'll have all kinds of links, especially to really we covered a great variety of the experiences that you offer. The rowing in Venice, this after hours St. Mark's, I really highly recommend the sidecar in Rome, the 6:45 a.m. Rome Vatican tour. I think we've given people a lot of ideas.
Yes, we have. Well, thank you. Thank you for the space. Uh, Thank you for having this wonderful, delightful conversation. I couldn't be prouder of the dream enablers that Christine and I have surrounded ourselves with. Anybody from the tour guides to the meet and greet staff to our amazing team in ticketing and marketing and operations. We're very much looking forward to help you make your dreams come true.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you I was really taken aback by how you reminded me and everyone that when we go to Italy, we are fulfilling when we go for these experiences. I mean, I even forget, and the name is Dream of Italy, that it is more than a trip, always.
Yeah.
Always. When it comes to Italy, there are so many layers. So I think people will find your offerings to be an elevated choice, and give them something to talk about and remember and reflect on, which is the best kind of travel. transformative.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
For more information about this podcast episode, show notes, and a discount on LivTours, visit dreamofitaly.com/17.